Everyone, welcome to another rousing edition of the Orita Podcast. I'm taking this call from the Numeral headquarters, which are very nice, and we've never had a sponsor, but because they gave me a free phone booth, I will call them a sponsor. So if you need tax or something done, call Sam. They're very good at what they do. I'm excited to have Chris and Dan, both of whom are like actually legit partnerships experts. We're going to talk about their history, how to build partnership orgs, something else. I work very closely with Dan right now. We are a Klaviyo partner. Orita serves a bunch of Klaviyo brands on AI segmentation. We will not talk at all about that product today. We will be talking about how to build a partnerships org, how brands should be thinking about that, their history, et cetera. Chris, because you are obviously the more impressive partnership mind on this call, I'd love for you to give an intro to yourself. Dan, we'll say one or two nice things about you. Chris, I'd love for you to give like a proper intro to yourself, your background, and what you're up to today. I might have a follow-up question or two, and then Dan, obviously, I'll bring it to you next.
Amazing. Well, first of all, I gotta protect my guy Dan, who I care deeply about. So no
There we
more
go.
bullying
Thank
my
you,
buddy
Chris.
Dan here. I'm here to protect him. But yeah, look, thrilled to be here with you, Aaron. Chris Lavoie, based in Toronto. I've been in partnerships not that long, like close to 7 years. Started as an entry-level tech partner manager at Gorgeous, which is how Dan and I came to know each other. But about 3.5 years ago, I started basically a side hustle business called Partnership Mastermind, where I was getting a ton of demand to coach and mentor and advise people, and I couldn't do that in a one-to-one sense. So I started doing it in a one-to-many. So I have this Partnership Mastermind kind of certificate bootcamp program, like a mini YC accelerator batch, where I have quota carrying partner pros from every company you can imagine across the globe. Spend 8 weeks in our private programs. Each week we cover a different topic. You get paired up with people in the group who are a good fit for you to kind of work with. And then at the end of the program, you have a big boost in your skills, confidence, and network. That's evolved dramatically in the last 3.5 years. 14 months ago, I went full time and quit corporate life. And so now we're just trying to aggressively scale so we can help more and more businesses and operators.
Just a quick follow-up on that. Who is the ideal audience to sign up for that? Obviously, we're not doing this as an infomercial, but is it like partnerships leaders? Is it people being promoted? Is it the entry level? Yeah. What's the right fit?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I know people hate like when you say like, oh yeah, we can kind of support you all, but we do have two core audiences, like the operator IC level. For you, we have community, we have programs, we have tools. So we service you there. And the companies you work within could be early stage startups where they're just trying to establish a first partner program from 0 to 1, or you're in a more mature scaling company. Like we've had people from Klaviyo, Shopify, HubSpot, you name it, go through our programs. And then on the leader company side, we could do more heavier lift things, whether it's advisory work or more hands-on fractional placement work. We can actually put people into your orgs. We can support with recruiting, and we can actually coach and train your teams in a private setting. So that's my 30-second pitch.
Thanks, man. And then the most important question is, you have a PhD in organic chemistry, bio, some I don't know, something very difficult.
Yeah.
Explain.
Yeah. So real quick, I love to teach. I love to learn. I always wanted to be at the cutting edge. So I was doing a Bachelor of Science in math, switched over to organic chemistry, then did a PhD in organic chemistry and thought I wanted to become a professor. Went to Caltech to do my postdoctoral fellowship. Was on the 1 yard line, like literally like the Russell Wilson on the 1 yard line against the Patriots in 2014. And then I just had like a full blown quarter life crisis in like epic, spectacular fashion. Didn't know what I wanted to do, but then somehow, some way, I got into consulting, and then one of my best friends was the first partnership hire at Gorgeous. Shout out to Billy McLennan. And he was just, got to be honest, was telling me about how much money he was making in a month or a quarter, which was like dwarfing what I was making in a year. And so I was like, I don't know anything about e-commerce or Shopify or tech partnerships, but that sounds interesting to me. And then here we are.
That's amazing. Thank you. All right, handing off to Dan Caldwell. And just to be very clear, I opened this by saying Chris and Dan because, Chris, I was definitely going to butcher saying your last name, but Caldwell is an easy one. So Dan Caldwell, Klaviyo, former ad role, next role. Dan, would love a proper intro from you, your background, and kind of how you got into partnerships.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been doing technology partnerships now for about 10 years, and the last 5 of them being at Klaviyo. And I've worn a lot of different hats here on this team doing technology partnerships at Klaviyo. I've onboarded hundreds of integrations, built out in a one-to-one fashion. We built out a scaled motion for it, have really played a hands-on role in building out a program, but then also working with some of our top partners like Orita and having a smaller book. So the really successful Shopify apps all the way up to some of the biggest companies in the world and working with them on building integrations and then ultimately scaling out to get our customers to use them.
Did you always know you wanted to be in partnerships, or what was kind of the draw originally?
No. So yeah, I started my career in customer support, just being yelled at by customers for 40 hours a week, which is great. But I learned a ton about the product too. And then a role opened up on the partnerships team. I didn't really know what partnerships was at the time. It was like this new business unit that they were launching, and they needed somebody, some young person that really knows the product well to field a bunch of random questions. So I got that gig. And my thought was, hey, I don't know what I want to do with my career, but technology partnerships and how it's described to me is like you're kind of doing 5 jobs at the same time across it's part sales, it's part product, it's part CS, it's part finance, and whatever the 5th one is. And it was like, hey, maybe if I do this job where I have to wear so many different hats, I'll figure out what I want to do with my career. But then I realized I kind of just like wearing a bunch of hats at the same time all the time. And so I've stuck with it for a while.
I love it. You could also just be a founder and be exhausted. You can do partnerships and founding like Chris does and wear a lot of hats.
100%.
Dan, I want to reflect on my impression of you, and then I want to ask some advice from you, or like how you think about stuff. And then Chris, obviously jump in whenever you want. Like you've thought about this, big companies, small companies around kind of across the board. So Caldwell, I think I met you probably when I was at Loop Returns running, initially the partnership org with Dan and Nan, and we were like rebuilding it. And I remember thinking you were a pain in the butt and that you were a really, really hard gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Super smart, super kind. Like I always enjoyed our interactions, but my God, I could not like break through. And I'm not even sure if this happened before that at Passport Shipping, but like you and I bumped into each other enough. And then when we started working together with Orita and Klaviyo, like I started to kind of peel back a little bit about how you thought about partnerships and where you should be spending your time and how to kind of protect the org. And so I actually like really curious, how do you, because you are at an awesome company that is building an ecosystem, right? You're the platform. There have got to be 1,000 companies that want your time, your team's time, whatever.
Yeah.
How do you think about cutting through the noise and figuring out who is actually not a worthwhile human when I say a partner, but like a worthwhile company to partner with? Or how do you create those gates? I don't know. I want to get into more of like the principles, your philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to start with some assumptions on a partner. I mean, part of it's like quantitative. What is the overlap here? So like with the Loop Returns, there's a bunch of overlap. That was exciting. Or do we both have prospects on both sides that we're interested in? And then what's the use case? Is that use case really adding customer value? And I think with the Loop Returns one, it was. But then it's like, okay, let's build out the enablement resources. Let's tell this story. But what's that energy that I am met with when I bring this internally? Like, what does that spark interest from customers and from folks like CS internally? And that's when it's like, if I'm putting in all this effort and I'm not being received on the other side for the people who are speaking to the customers or the customers themselves, then there's something missing there, or there's something else that we need to figure out. And so sometimes that catches. And like with Orita, like you guys come up all the time, and our CS team is excited for you guys. So it's really encouraging for the effort that we put into this partnership. But other partners, is sometimes it is not that it's not a great company, not a great use case, but it's just like it isn't gaining traction for some reason. And sometimes that's a long-term issue, and sometimes it's short-term. Because like when Chris and I started the Gorgeous partnership, actually at first it wasn't that particularly successful of a partnership at the time. What changed was Klaviyo started to grow SMS, and then we had a really good integration with SMS, a stronger use case. Now we got met with much better energy from AE's CS, and that allowed Chris and I to really grow a partnership. And so like that was one of the key things, that energy I get back.
Chris, jump in. Like take this wherever you want, and then I've got some follow-up questions.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you kind of shared that personal anecdote, Aaron, with your first experience with Dan, because if I may say, it was similar, but not in a mean way, but like just like, on the spectrum of you depend so much on your main point of contact on the other side of a partnership, right? Usually between a partner manager A and partner manager B. And they can either make your life miserable or they can make your life easy and amazing. Dan, once you could get the buy-in, was extremely helpful, but he definitely on average was more tough to crack than others. And initially, if I'm just being brutally honest, I was like, man, it's going to be really difficult to get anything cooking with Klaviyo. But as I matured, I started appreciating like, oh shit, like, I don't know if that word is okay on the show. The more I came to mature, because Dan had more experience than I did, I was like, oh, okay, like at Klaviyo, everyone wants to work with Klaviyo. Like it's so easy for Dan to just get spread, razor thin. He can only say yes to so many things. Whereas I was coming from a perspective at Gorgeous as like a much earlier stage startup where it's like, I've got all the time and resources I need. Like I can say yes more aggressively. So it wasn't until later in my career and working with Dan, I was like, wow, like I actually learned a lot from Dan and how he was more picky, choosy, but where they deployed resources and which bets they placed on partners, which really forced me to think a lot better about how to even approach working with Klaviyo in particular. Because there was a long time where we had really nothing going. We weren't on their radar. We weren't getting much traction. And my old boss, Phil, who I know was on your show recently, Aaron, he was hammering me. He's like, why can you not activate Klaviyo? And I'm like, dude, everyone's trying. It's not so easy. So I'll share more about that in a second. I'll share more in a second, but that was a really important lesson for me of like, okay, you've got to earn it, right? Like you've really got to earn it. It starts with customer stuff, starts with some commercial stuff, but just wanted to share that personal anecdote about Dan as well.
Dan, thinking about what you said, right? So it's like, look, you've got to have a good product, a good use case for customers. You also like when there's market pull and the customers are pulling you in or the CS team is pulling you in, right?
Yep.
Like, is there anything else when you're thinking about how to think about a partner? And again, like you're kind of stepping back from what Dan should do for what Klaviyo should do or what even Orita should do when we're thinking about partners, right? Are there any other attributes or is like those the two things, like great product and like true market pull internally?
I think it's also the effort and the results that the partner starts with too. And again, it also really depends on the partnership motion. Like at Klaviyo, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of demand to partner with Klaviyo and do more than what we can offer. So there's limited slots for us to work with partners. So we have to be a little bit choosy on who we work with. So that's why I've been a bit of a gatekeeper over a lot of my career here. I've been on the flip side, like I launched original Google integration. That was a much different dynamic. But with the majority of the integrations that we launch, so you're looking for not just conceptually, could this work, but is it working? Is there a forcing factor? And with both Gorgeous and Orita, there was a forcing factor. There was success coming through. Like it was like I kind of like to feel like I don't have a choice to work with some of these partners because this is happening and there's momentum and I just need to build on that momentum. And that's some of the stuff that started happening. Chris's team came through and was just like, hey, we have these customers that want this integration and they're interested in Klaviyo now. And also here's some resources for your CS team so they could better speak to this integration. It's like, man, that's adding a lot of value before and being asked to do favors. And Orita was in a similar spot where like, they're putting in the work, they're driving results. And I'm like, okay, now there's something here. There's proof in this pudding. This isn't just talk. Now, how can I build on that momentum?
Chris, what's your recollection of when Gorgeous really started to kind of find traction with Klaviyo? And what did you take away from that? Is it the same as what Dan did, which was like, oh yeah, there's like this exogenous SMS started to matter and so therefore Gorgeous mattered? Or was there work you were doing under the hood? Yeah. What are your reflections?
Yeah. Well, yeah, actually, I'm going to take a step back and tell the full story because I joined Gorgeous. So my first day at Gorgeous was the day we hit 10 million in ARR. Like literally I joined and everyone's literally popping champagne bottles. I was at Phil's place. He used a samurai sword to slice off the top of a champagne bottle to toast 10 million ARR. And I swear to God, I was like, what does ARR mean? Like that's how green I was. I'd never even been in tech. So that was my start. But to go a step further back, I think people will enjoy this story, especially Dan. In my interview process, keep in mind, I am 10 years in chemistry. I spend 1 year in consulting. That is it. Then all of a sudden I find myself interviewing for the first ever tech partner manager job at Gorgeous. The interview series went like this. Started with Phil, who was our VP of Biz Dev and Partnerships. Check. I was basically like, I'm green as hell, but I learn really fast. Bet on me if you want someone to like figure this thing out. And then my next interview is with the current CEO and founder, Romain Lapierre. Check. He's like, look, we hire for talent, not necessarily just hire for experience. Check. Third, and so then I was told I get the job, right? And I promise I'm going to get to something relevant to this partnership story. Then I was told I get the job and I get an offer letter. And then Phil tells me, he's like, oh shoot, we forgot that you're supposed to also interview with our CTO, Alex Plugaru. So I was like, oh my God, like that's going to be the hardest interview. He's the CTO and this is a tech partner manager job. And I don't understand half the words in this job description. So I get on a call with him and I swear to God, his first question is he's like, we're scoping this blockbuster integration with Klaviyo, where it's going to be this like, you can handle email use cases straight inside the help desk, et cetera. How would you support driving integration adoption of this in the early days? And then how would you leverage the insights and customer success stories from the integration launch to parlay that into commercial kind of go-to-market activities? And I just got to be honest, I was shitting my pants on this interview. I was like, what? He was talking about webhooks and stuff, and I had no idea what the hell he was talking about. So I obviously bombed that interview. I ended up getting hired. 6 months later, I'm making my first hire as a manager. right? And I'm inside our lever account, which is the ATS then. And I'm like, I was a bad boy. I was like, I wonder if I can find my kind of interview notes there. And usually they protect that from employees, by the way, but this is startup days. So I find my profile and like Phil was like, check. Romain, the CEO, was like, check. And then Alex was like, hard pass. Like maybe he can be an account executive, right? But he has no partnership experience. He couldn't answer any of my questions. So Phil clearly went to bat for me. So I had to tell that story because at the time I actually joined Gorgeous, we were actually in the midst of scoping out a first of its kind integration between a help desk and an email and SMS provider. My first ever partnership call ever was between Phil and Stu, obviously Dan, who I know you know and respect. Shout out to Stu. So that was my first call. And that was kind of the starting point. So I joined at the time where we're getting integration built. And then to answer your question more directly, Aaron, we launched integration, but not much happened in the early days. Like neither side was doing a great job or investing much to like drive adoption. And it wasn't until a year or two later when kind of organically adoption started to pick up and we started to see the value is actually delivering that we could actually do more. So I can go further, but that was kind of the realistic starting point. Big idea. This is going to be a huge unlock. And then we launch it and no one was really driving the adoption that we needed to make it successful.
Do you think it was a big idea and appreciated by both sides, or it just felt like, oh, this is so self-evident to Gorgeous, and Klaviyo was just like, this is cute, but we don't really know yet?
The latter is exactly right. And this is a hard lesson for anyone kind of working in tech partnerships is it's obvious to come up with an idea for an integration when it's so important to you and you've got a handful of like flagship accounts and customers who want it. And it's in like, from your perspective, it's like the biggest thing ever. But what is the perspective of the partner on the other side? If both sides don't really give a shit and see huge upside for investing in this, you're going to have a situation like we did in the early days where it's like, we're so gung-ho about this. We want to drive adoption, but it's the other partner's not playing ball. And Klaviyo is so much bigger. We're so diluted within their kind of tech ecosystem.
One of the things that I always talk to our team about or any advisee or anything is like, my priority isn't your priority. And so it feels very much that, which is like, look, we've got the business case, we've got it. If you are the small guy and you're building this out, this is open to both of you guys, obviously, right? Because Dan, you even made the comment, you did do this with Google, right? Or you see a lot of small guys who are like trying to partner with Klaviyo. What are the like to-dos and what are the to-don'ts? Let's assume that you get the integration and it's like maybe a big deal to you, but not yet to the partner. What are the things you should like keep doing and doing and doing, and where should you just like stop pushing?
Yeah, perhaps I'll kick things off real quick, Dan. I'll flip it over to you, especially given your big company experience, which I don't have. So I think it's important to us, but maybe not so important to the company at large. You said that point, Aaron. But within those larger orgs, if both sides approve getting integration built, it matters to somebody. And that's actually a huge theme overall is like you need to drill down until you find the nichest, smallest team hidden in the basement. It's like, I never even knew that team existed because they care. So Klaviyo is massive. They have Fortune 100 companies. They've got Enterprise Plus, Enterprise Mid-Market Plus, Mid-Market SMB. So it's like for this integration you're building, Klaviyo as a whole, right? Like Andrew doesn't give a shit about this integration yet. But I bet you there's some SMB sales manager who's losing deals right now because this integration is not there, or some customer success like lead who is having churned accounts or failure to expand said accounts because this missing feature / integration. So you need to figure out where the pain is within the customer base, find the people who own said accounts, and then start there, right? Because they will care. They will really lean in. And that's where the final thing I'll say, and I'll flip it to you, Dan. As a partner manager, you need to get so much better at multi-threading your way through the org. Sales, good sellers understand how to do that. But if Dan is your main point of contact, and let's just say Dan's a total dud, which he's not, right? You can't just rely on Dan. You need to use Dan to get to the next intro. Maybe you talk to a manager of mid-market sales and you have that call. And guess what? They're not the right person. No problem. Get them to introduce you to the next person and then keep following the signal until you get to that team who actually gives a shit.
Yeah, 100%. And I think just an exercise of making sure you're really putting yourself in the other person's shoes for a while, understanding what they care about and what you have to offer. And it's so common for people just to come to the door, the first call with like a traditional partnership playbook of let's send referrals, let's do co-marketing, let's do that. That doesn't separate yourself from the pack. And it oftentimes doesn't solve like niche problems. And so it's understanding what is that person's goal. If it's like you're speaking to a partner manager, there's a million different comp plans and goals that teams have, like what is that person operating under? Does that align with the problems that you can help solve? If not, yeah, page out of Chris's book, like make sure you're connecting with other people in the org. Because at the end of the day, like I speak to some of our customers, but not a ton, trying to get down and distill to CS and those managements that, or those managers that are struggling with something and you could help solve. Like those are the people that can make me.
And you kind of mentioned the same old playbook.
Yeah.
Are there things in the same old playbook that actually work? And are there things in the playbook where you're like, please God, just stop doing this if I were to walk in? And obviously, Chris would love to hear your take on that too.
The playbook of just the traditional partnership activities that you can do is the playbook for a reason. Some of those things can work. And then it just comes down to what is your dynamic with that partner? And or do you have the leverage? Do they have the leverage? Who's the bigger fish? Or are you guys more peers? And try to figure that out. And then just get a little bit more specific and just, again, leading with value, making sure like, would a webinar actually be helpful for this person on the other side? Or is it more of a co-sell? Or, hey, maybe they don't do co-sell and you have to figure out another motion. Typically, most meaningful sized companies, they can't just do everything for you. You might see activities of 10 different activities that they do with partners, but typically not one partner gets to do all 10 activities. So it's like the one that you have success with. The other thing I look for is somebody who comes through and it's like, hey, I have a lot of success of doing this activity with partnerships in my ecosystem. My marketing team crushes webinars or whatever it is, or we do these live small dinners and we are doing really well. We want to bring you in the loop there. Like that's the type of stuff that sticks out to me. And because I'm looking for what's successful that works in your ecosystem as well.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Chris, anything you want to jump in on the same old playbook?
Yeah, I think for me, like if we're talking like early days, like I think that's the track we're on here. You can't just come in with your same old laundry list of things that we got to do together or could do together. Like to be honest, in the early days, you have no idea who's going to be a good bet. And Klaviyo sounds like a great bet, but maybe it's not going to work out for a variety of reasons. So you're going to place 10 bets as an example on 10 partners. Realistically, if I'm being honest, if you get 2 to 3 hits in the 10 partners you test, that's phenomenal. Right. But the key is you want to open the aperture wide to start and testing a couple of strategic bet partners. And then as soon as, you want to disqualify them as quickly as you can, such that the ones that actually are starting to work out in early days, you want to press your advantage and go deep with them. So then getting into like the early days, say you're starting up with Klaviyo and you're a smaller player. It's like, okay, you're the smaller fish. You want to show impact. What would be meaningful to Klaviyo? And it starts with the person on the other side. So if Dan's your main point of contact, it's like, hey, Dan, what's your quota model? What's your specific KPIs? If this partnership is successful relative to your annual fully loaded quota, realistically, what are you expecting my company, say Gorgeous, to contribute to? And what you want to hear is that they want to place a big bet on you. If a partner manager at Klaviyo owns a $1 million annual source revenue goal, I want to be a big chunk of that. Right? Because it means it's going to excite them. It means that they're going to really invest the proper resources to make this helpful. So the final thing I'll say is you want to start with one small bet.
Just say I can confirm that Chris does ask it exactly that way. And it does make an impact because
for sure.
I remember he did that with the Gorgeous Klaviyo partnership. And it's just like, hey, here are some numbers that we're trying to hit. Do you think you could do this? We set goals and we hit them. And like that was meaningful because that level of thoughtfulness and that positioning really stuck out.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Dan. And the final thing I'll just wrap up is people rush into partnerships and start executing so fast. And Lord knows I made so many of these mistakes, both as an IC and as a leader. But like you slow is steady and steady is fast. Like you want to get more information in the beginning. So it's like meet more people, understand your main point of contact deeper. Like what stresses is Dan under? Is he up for a promotion? Is he on a PIP? Like what's his quota cycle look like? How much is he going to realistically depend on us? And then what about Dan's boss? Dan's not on a PIP, obviously.
Why is Dan on the PIP again? When are they going to fire Dan? No, I get it.
You got to be nice here. You got to be nice. So like getting to understand all the influential people, what's the sphere of influence that really matters and understand everything. And then as one of the biggest breakthroughs actually specifically between Gorgeous and Klaviyo was I had really important conversations with Dan and even got to meet some more senior people. And I said, look, going into, I think it must have been 2024, what are like the 3 biggest rocks for Klaviyo next year? Right? Because we're placing a huge bet on Klaviyo. And if we want to really impress them and get on their radar, we need to be doing things that are directly in service of those 3 big rocks, which is to say that sending another deal isn't not all deals are created equal. Not all integration use cases or marketing activities are created equal. And I remember to this day, what was said to me at the time, at least, was like, look, we're pretty saturated on Shopify, right? So we're trying to like establish more presence on non-Shopify platforms. This was back in late 2023, going to 2024. So we're like looking to like establish ourselves more on those other platforms. We're trying to go up market. This was pre-IPO days, right? So we're really trying to go up market, and we're super strong in North America. So we're trying to also expand into, say, Europe as an example. So I was like, amazing. So I remember I would talk to Gorgeous CEO Romain and our CTO and Phil, and I was like, look, if we really want to make a dent and get into the good graces of Klaviyo, we have to check all three of these boxes off in every activity we do across product, customer success, marketing, you name it. And that was a huge reason we were able to be at, I think in 2024, like the number one revenue driving partner as far as a Klaviyo tech partner went. And that was something I was really proud of because we were nowhere on the radar really in 2022, a little bit in 2023, but in 2024, we were able to have like this banner year in part because we were asking the right questions.
This is the time of the podcast where we give Dan 1 minute to give constructive feedback to Chris and Aaron and to mock us and explain why we should be fired from our roles. Do you want to take this or do you want to yield that time?
Retaliation? No, I'll pass on the opportunity, but thank you.
All right, it's fine. Quietly later over Slack. Well, this is what you're bad at. Chris, you said something a couple minutes ago. Look, if you start 10 partnerships and 2 or 3 do a really good job, way to go. The question I have for you, especially earlier phases and 2 or 3 is good, right? Because you're building your playbook. Do you think about that like 10 different types of partners or 2 different types of partners with 5 each, right? Because like you could think tech, agency, platform, something, like how broad should you go at the beginning? And how do you think about when to go broad, when to go narrow?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. So I would resist the urge to go too broad, too fast, because yes is the most expensive word in the English language, and everything you say yes to, every one you say yes to, you're just completely draining your resources. So you have to be careful there. And you can't just arbitrarily decide, oh, we want to have every partner type, right? So imagine you're like a CRO or a VP of biz dev, and your CEO knocks on your door and it's like, okay, it's time to like start turning on that partnership motion. And then you go study the landscape. You're like, yeah, we need an agency partner program. We need a tech partner program. We need an affiliate partner program. Let's just go find people and stand those up. Like, that's just not the case. Like every company, depending on your product, how you go to market, how you service your customers and implement your customers based on your average contract value and all the unit economics there, like those are the things that actually dictate which partner motion / partner type makes the most sense for you. And even if it is possible that you can have really successful programs of each type in the future, there's only one best bet to start with, which could be tech. Like for instance, imagine you're an early to mid-stage startup and you don't have enough engineering resources to complete your product roadmap as it pertains to like close loss reasons and churn reasons. And it's like, well, we can't just hire a bunch of expensive engineers, but there's a couple major gaps in our product that we could actually plug, so to speak, if we did an integration route, the old build by partner type approach. And so if you have a really kind of, incomplete product where you could actually solve a lot of those critical gaps through an integration, to be honest, as nice as like a more commercially oriented motion like agency sounds like, you should go the tech partnerships route first because that's the highest leverage. Now, conversely, let's just say your product is phenomenal, right? Like NPS, it's super sticky, everything's through the roof, but maybe some of your other acquisition channels are sluggish right now. Obviously, outbound, inbound, you don't have like a ton of domain authority. Well, maybe agency partnerships is a good play, especially if your product, you can actually build a business on top of like servicing and implementing those. So it really, I want to give you a better answer, but it really depends on the nuance of your product and your situation in the universe. And then working backwards from that usually makes it easy to understand what's the right starting path.
Dan, anything you want to sharpen there or go down a different path?
I think it really depends on the product. When you look at a Klaviyo, for instance, or like I think Gorgeous would be in a similar boat, you really need, they're kind of like an engine, and integration data is a fuel for that engine. And in those situations, you really want to go wide. You want a lot of partners, you want a lot of integrations. How can you scale that out? As opposed to, I'd say more like an Orita business model, like picking a smaller group of those and going deeper is the right approach. And there's a lot of partners that also have that. So it really kind of depends on the product and the needs for additional data to help enrich your own product. And that would help to shape the strategy.
One of the things that I think a lot about, and Dan, I feel like you and I probably have talked about this, is to me, especially as a startup, and Chris, to your point about saying yes is exhausting, can't do it, with limited time and limited resources, you should choose the partners or the partner type at the very least, where even if they deeply dislike you, they're still going to refer you because you make their customers happier and the product perform better. And ideally, you also make this partner more money because your existence makes their product stickier. They are able to upsell something. And the thing that I find, and like my biggest bugaboo is, hey, this is cool. Let's go sponsor an event together, or let's do a dinner. where you're not talking to the same ICP. You might be talking to the same brand, but a different buyer at the brand. You're literally just putting logos on an event where it's like, oh yeah, we're doing a happy hour with this other company, but there's no actual like 1 + 1 = 3. I'm curious for you guys, is there ever the space where actually just like getting brand out, especially early days, and Chris, maybe we start with you, where actually doing a lot of random stuff is a good approach
Sure.
because you're kind of throwing stuff at the wall and you're seeing what sticks?
Sure. Yeah. No, it's a good question. And like I spent 10 years in a lab as an experimentalist. So Lord knows I'm a big fan of kind of testing, but there's a couple of key constraints there. First, you have to have a method of measurement, right? I don't want to rattle off the good old fashioned experimental procedure, but like you start with a hypothesis, right? Then you have your like tools and like how are you actually going to run the actual experimental procedure. But then one of the key things you always see is how will you measure the results, which in this context is how will you actually know if you're successful relative to your hypothesis. So it's fine to test these distinct activities and I call them bets, but you actually have to have a sound hypothesis. You have to have a way to evaluate in real time and certainly in a postmortem sense, like was this successful? And then if it was a total fail, what does that tell you and how can you proceed with that? And then also if it was really successful, what does that also teach you and what's the next step? So I'm fine with that. And then the final thing I'll add there as well is these things need to have time, kind of a time bound element, right? There's just, you're leaving too much entropy at play when you're just testing a bunch of these things. You don't have, these time guards on them of like, okay, I'm going to give this 30 days. Here's my hypothesis. Here's how I'll measure success. After 30 days, I'm going to pause and analyze the lay of the land. So in the early days, within your resource constraints, test, right? Like test co-marketing, right? If Klaviyo can feature in something and you're a small brand, that's huge, right? If you can do an in-person event and you're only the minor sponsor and you only have to spend a couple $1,000 to get in the room to all of your relevant buyers, take that opportunity, right? Like, so test, but you have to have a way of understanding which ones were successful and which ones were not, because your VP is going to come to you after a couple months of these experiences. I'm like, okay, Dan, we let you test a bunch of ideas in the last 3 months. Which ones worked? Which ones didn't? Which ones are we going to scale? And which ones are we going to completely put on ice? You better be able to answer that question if you're going to get the carte blanche to test these things.
Absolutely. I'll add to that. Aaron, I think this answers your question, but it's at least related. I think partners in the Klaviyo ecosystem and other ecosystems, I think they bank too much on doing activities with the platform themselves, with a Shopify, with a Klaviyo, with a Salesforce, with a Adobe. And instead of looking at who else is in that ecosystem, and they may not have a direct integration with each other. They may not have a 1 + 1 = 3 story with each other, but they individually do with that other platform. So can they work together in a go-to-market motion for, I think specifically events is beneficial for this. I think that's where there could be a lot of success too, because you could find more of your peers in that and there's less competition. So that could be a good approach I think is often overlooked.
I think it's a really good call out. One of the things I'm very mindful of is it very much depends on the partnerships person, but many are gold on revenue and therefore present too much as sales. And even those who aren't and don't present as sales are perceived as sales. And to me, that can like put a barrier up. I'm not talking about the partnership manager to partnership manager relationship, but I'm talking about the partnership manager going deeper into the org. Does that resonate with the two of you? We're actually like talking about this currently internally right now, and I can go more specific if needed, but does that track, and how does a partnership person really, again, not just like fake it, but really show like, look, I'm in it for the best interest of our shared customers. I'm trying to solve this. What are the behaviors that you've seen work?
Yeah, I've been on every comp plan you can imagine in technology partnerships. So I've seen the extremes of those and the middles and everything. It certainly can't. I mean, I could pick up pretty quick in a partnership conversation. I probably know what their comp plan is before asking them, because based off of their questioning and the energy that they bring to that call. I think the mistake a lot of partner managers make is they jump into the sale before the customer value. And at the end of the day, like you might be able to get some early successes with like being super aggressive on the sales front. But if you don't have a backbone of really strong customer value, it's not sustainable whatsoever. That's going to fizzle out so fast. And it's not just going to fizzle out. You're going to burn every bridge. Like as a partner manager, if I go into like CS or AEs and I'm pushing a partner that is not providing a ton of customer value, but like, hey, they sent me a lead, so I want to help them hit their goals on the same side. Like, that's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to work. And I also just tarnish my reputation. And the next time I do have a partner that has a lot of customer value, they're not going to trust me. And I think that's what's worked for me at Klaviyo. And like we talked about earlier on the call about me being like choosy and a tough gatekeeper. I really hold a high bar for customer value before I really lean in, because I want my reputation internally to be positive and trusted as an advisor for that. So when we want to go and do any sort of like co-sell or referral, like they know that when I'm asking for it, it's because at the end of the day, it adds customer value.
Hmm. Yeah, and I'll provide a different perspective on that, because everything Dan said is spot on. Let's just talk a little bit about how your company literally views your role in partnerships. Let's just say you're a senior IC, senior partner manager of some type, right? And let's just say you're at a mid-size org, right? 500 or so employees, especially now and more than ever, where if we're just being blunt, CEOs like yourself, Aaron, are asking the question, I want more productivity, which ideally comes without having to cut headcount. But guess what? It might just come from cutting headcount. Let's just be honest, right? So job security is a hot topic. So for you as a partner manager, you want to ask yourself, how does the company even view my role and the importance of it? And how many people actually know what I do and the impact that I have? On the job security front, which is a side topic, the more people who know what you do and the impact that you have, the more indispensable you are. So when these tough conversations happen behind closed doors, guess what? You're probably going to survive. Now, to answer your question more specifically, Aaron, there's really 4 things that partnership managers and partnership professionals are responsible for, which are the 4 things, by the way, that the company cares about. Are you creating pipeline? Okay. And then for the pipeline that exists, are you helping move that pipeline down the funnel faster, right? i.e. influence? Are you helping the company expand your existing accounts faster and more efficiently? And are you helping your company retain and maintain your kind of customer base, right? That's it. Net new sourcing, influencing deals down the pipeline, expansions, and renewals, right? So I know that sounds like I'm oversimplifying, but you got to ask yourself, based on my job, based on the partners that I have proximity to and the resources and skills that I have, which of those 4 am I able to make the biggest impact on? Because they're all important, by the way. And you have to be honest with yourself. And it's easy to think you want to do all of those things. You can't, right? You can probably do 2 of those really well. Which of those 2 can you have the biggest impact on? And I promise if you go super deep on those 1 or 2, you will have a proven impact that is visible and felt, and you will really boost your job security. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's kind of where my brain
went. Great framing. Chris, I do have a follow-up. I'm trying to figure out I don't have a well-developed perspective on this topic, but I'm trying to figure out if I think the partner manager is a doer for the org or is a puppet master. And obviously it always depends, but is a good partner manager the person who understands where their limitations are and where they are actually like creating the introductions between the right like counterparts at a company, right? Caldwell, to your point, if you're like selling before you've proven value, maybe the first step is actually, let's get our CS orgs talking. And I want to get out of the way and just be like, hey, we have a shared customer. How do we do a better job? So I'm curious, like, if that is a dynamic that, if I'm making up this dynamic, or Chris, if that changes based on the size of company, how do you think about this?
Yeah, good question. Definitely get Dan's reaction to this question. But I think the first things first, I think you mentioned, like, should they be kind of humble and aware of their kind of limitations? I think every good employee out there is self-aware enough to understand where they're strong and where they're weak. And I'm a big believer in like leaning into your strengths makes you stronger, focusing on your weaknesses makes you weaker. So that's one point. But I think you're in the modern era, right? A super strong kind of partnership IC should not just be relationship management piece. And I actually kind of dislike the label partner manager, right? I think there's an important role type called like partner account manager, right? Or even channel account manager, which is for like, say you work at a friend of mine, she works at one of the biggest players in tech, and she owns one single partner. So like she truly is a PAM, and it's a massive PAM, and she has huge responsibilities. And that's the only partner she manages. It's kind of akin to a customer success manager. But I actually dislike the modern vernacular around just like partner manager. It's very passive. It doesn't have like a biz dev implication to it. And it just kind of sounds like, you're managing the status quo. Whereas I kind of like more of a partnership revenue executive, kind of a hybrid between AE and partner manager, where it's more implicit that you're expected to not just maintain the status quo, but actually grow the account. And now with modern tooling, one of the biggest bottlenecks for your average partner manager is a lot of the admin boring work, right? That's largely being wiped away. Whether you're skilled at AI or not, your company is actually making it easier to do. So I think the next wave of partnership ICs, the one who can survive and thrive, are able to create way more leverage, right? Like way more scalable systems that doesn't just rely on them constantly talking to people on calls. So that's the next wave I see. And that's why I think partner manager as a job title probably is going to need to change because I don't think it's as relevant anymore.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I think it really depends on the size of the org. I think the smaller, the more of a doer they need to be. And the bigger you get, there's some of the doing, but I think it's a little bit more about scaling things out, building tools for others to use. And so that's a big part of the doing aspect. But from the translating your doing to a net result of a like pipeline generation, like Chris was talking about, at the end of the day, you're probably not on the front lines of sales or CS to drive those referrals. And so you need to influence those activities. And part of influence in that is doing. So I don't want to discount the term influence, kind of sounds weak sometimes. I think people interpret it as that, but there's some really strong doing in order to influence those end results and actions that need to get done.
I want to end talking about tooling, tips, AI, like how the role is changing. Before I get there, I do have a quick, maybe somewhat random question. All this is in service of a brand. Again, in the e-commerce ecosystem, right? We are like building a partnership to build a better something, experience, product, impact, whatever it is for the brand. How should a brand or the CEO or whatever of a company like drive influence to one of their partners, say, hey, I need you to go build a partnership with this other person? Like, have you ever seen that work well? Is that something that tech companies should be doing, is like encouraging the brands to do it, right? Like at the end of the day, like how do you get this more like customer led instead of, oh, this would be good for my company because I would grow because Klaviyo has a lot of brands on it?
That's a great question. And that is gold for us. Because at the end of the day, when we're talking about driving pipeline, all these things, like it sounds pretty dry businessy, but at the end of the day, we need integrations that solve customer problems. And a big incentive for that is knowing that customers are going to use this and drive value from it. So I've seen integration talks go on for years until one customer is just like, hey guys, I need this, and it gets done in 2 months. And that has happened multiple times. So my advice to brands who want this is, assuming you have like a customer success manager, draft them an email and explicitly ask them to pass that to their partnership team and to their product team. And those people would typically know what to do with it. But I think ensuring that it's not just going to that customer success manager or that salesperson to ask for it, they'll probably document it in whatever notes and systems that they have. But to really push, hey, can you please get this to your partnership team? Because that's gold for us. If I get that, I'm immediately sending that to that other partner. Like, we need to talk. How do we get this done? And that's my tip, is explicitly ask to get it in the hands of partnerships.
All right. So to wrap up, Dan, I actually want to start with you. And how has your role in partnerships changed in the last 6 months, 12 months? And I kind of want to get slightly more tactical, like what workflows, whether they're working or not yet, but like, are you experimenting with? Are you thinking about AI as like changing what the jobs to be done are, or is it an accelerant to the jobs to be done? And then Chris, jump in whenever you want, but obviously like let's abstract as much as we can about like how the role is changing and how you see kind of the best people building. We don't know what'll happen 2 years from now, but even in the next 6 or 12 months. So Dan, first of all, like, how's the role changing? What tools are you using? What's working? What are you not sure it's going to work, but you're experimenting with?
Yeah, absolutely. So last year I was really focused on partnerships at scale, because we talk a lot about prioritization and working with like really important strategic partners. But in Klaviyo's sense, like all of these integrations are really valuable to us. We only have so many resources, but one-on-one. So how do we scale that stuff out? So that was a big focus of mine last year. And that doesn't just go externally to partners. It goes towards our internal staff as well, to know about these integrations and how they work. And at some point, we have hundreds of integrations. So no one person's going to know all the details of this. So it was building custom AI chatbots for internal teams to get those answers. I personally trained them based off of my experience and the resources that we built out. So it was really exciting about that, being able to scale out a lot of the enablement resources that were built, and also just the knowledge base, so we can be a little bit more quick externally and internally. And now this year, I'm focusing a little bit more on more strategic partnerships with Klaviyo. And what I'm loving right now with these AI tools, I get such a better sense of what the conversations are. It was so difficult before to understand, hey, was there a conversation about my partner with a customer? What was the nature of that? Was it positive? Was it negative? Was there some misinformation in there that I could help correct? Like there's a being able to have that insight on what are those real conversations, what is that narrative internally with CS and AEs dramatically helps me navigate that partnership. And so that's when I can now know, hey, there was a customer that is, and it's not just talking about my partners, like there's a customer that expressed this problem that we're struggling to solve that I know my partner helps us solve. I could go to that customer success manager now and be like, hey, not sure if you knew about this partner and they solved this, but you had that conversation with the customer, like just in case you agree with me, like this might be a good solution to surface with them. That's the type of stuff that was so difficult to find. It was much more reactive, and now we could be proactive with it.
Chris, jump in, please.
Yeah. So I think the huge shift that I'm already seeing, and I think you're going to see it a lot more, is the collapse of like your traditional overwhelmed, overstretched partner manager who has this like bloated book of business, where we actually just did this huge report with HubSpot and Crossbeam where on average, only 28% of your like partners, so to speak, are like actively producing in the last 180 days. 180 days, not even 30 days, just 180 days, only 28% of your partners are actually contributing anything. So bloated portfolios, stretched super thin, constantly in firefighting mode. Now with AI, you can get so much smarter. And one of the biggest unlocks is understanding in real time which of my partners is hot and which one of my partners is not, right? Because partnerships compared to sales deals doesn't follow the same lifecycle sequence, right? It's not just discovery, right? And then demo, and then we sent them a quote, and now we're in contract and we sign them and then we're good. It's like, no, partnerships, you can sign, onboard a partner, but then from there, it's like very up and down, right? Like Klaviyo for you might be hot in Q1. And then for whatever reason, they're not as hot in Q2, and that's okay. It doesn't mean it's a disaster. So we're going to get so much smarter at being able to understand where's the biggest leverage within my book of business at any given time, because we have so much better data and proactive kind of trigger and alerts. But then the final piece I'll leave you with that I think is really practical is I think the way you're going to see your traditional company kind of staff and manage partners now is you're going to see the emergence of this like super IC, right? Which is a kind of a common thread right now in the SaaS ecosystem, where you have this IC who's kind of like a team lead, but is like super productive, very AI kind of trained. And they're going to be a lead of a pod, right? For a set number of accounts, like strategic accounts. And they are going to have a couple contributors, less senior people underneath them, such as partner marketing, partner enablement, partner ops, right? And you're going to start to see these super ICs leading these pods for a handful of like super strategic partner accounts. And they are the ones as like this team kind of moving through their own org and then obviously executing in these like short list of partners. And so I think that's like this big shift you're going to see, where right now what you have is this very flat team structure. It's like partner manager A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then you have some ancillary partner marketing, partner enablement, partner ops on the side. It's like, no, like identify who are your pods of partners, have some super IC kind of leading the charge, kind of guiding the rest of the teammates to kind of support them. And I think you can go so far with that model versus having like one partner manager for every 50 partners when only a couple of them are productive. So I'm seeing this, and I think that's going to be a big trend.
It also feels like it's much easier to figure out who is productive and who isn't. I don't mean by the human, I mean like by the partnership. And so like you 100%. Just have faster data and faster understanding. Fellas, this has been awesome. Thank you. We have a couple minutes left. Caldwell, I want to start with you. Any last takeaway? You've given enough, so you don't need to, but if there's something you want to share or any advice, please. And then where can folks find you? And then Chris, obviously we'll wrap with you. Same questions.
Yeah. I think we unpacked the key stuff. I think a quick recap, I think just really putting yourself in the other partner's shoes and looking at your situation and what you need. There's no one playbook that works. It's really nuanced between your business model, who you're trying to partner with, how your product works with these integrations with other partners. So, I wouldn't put too much weight in any one model or playbook for partnerships. You've really got to interpret that for your own situation. And yeah, in terms of finding me, Dan Caldwell, you can find me on LinkedIn. Is probably the best way to reach out to me.
It's a great social network. All right, Chris, last but not least, you run a whole business around this. So you also have shared enough, and you could just be like, here's where to find us. But if there's any other takeaway, please share it. Great. Well said. especially how to have those hard conversations. Chris, where can folks find you?
Get you on there. I've already had
My calendar's booked. I listened to your podcast with Dan where I was like, all right, Dan, do you think I can sucker Chris in so I can like try to tease out his insights instead of just yours? So Dan was just like a figurehead for this. So we could actually talk to you, Chris.
Oh my God.
Dan, if it wasn't clear, Chris and I deeply respect you and we think you're a wonderful person. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's good.
Guys, thank you. This was awesome. Really appreciate both your time and insight.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Likewise.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, dude.
All right, see you guys.
All right, Aaron.
I'm Aaron Schwartz, co-founder of Orita AI, where we help hundreds of brands like Spanx, Faraday, and Salt and Stone get the absolute most out of their customer lists. Learn more at Orita.ai or check out my interviews with the founders of Klaviyo, Birdies, Caraway, and plenty more wherever you get your podcasts.